Good morning, and welcome to my Borderpolar podcast. I'm Lynette, and this is my Borderpolar podcast where I share what it's like to be living with a borderpolar diagnosis. Just to remind you, a borderpolar diagnosis is a dual diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. This video today is going to be about intentions. When you have a borderpolar diagnosis, your mind is mostly in chaos. Um, Trying to get yourself to slow down, your brain to slow down some days is really difficult. Some days all I can do is just focus on pacing. Other days, if you're in a depressive episode, it's all you can do to try to get out of bed. So some days you're trying to speed up, other days you're trying to slow down. Some days you're both doing both at the same time, but regardless, it's just chaos in there all the time. So what it's like to live with border polar is just trying to manage your emotions 24/7. And if you can break this down into small, manageable portions throughout the day by focusing on what your intentions are, then it's helpful. I started focusing on my intentions after I was having a discussion with my mother about the person that I would like to be. See, one of the other symptoms of, well, BPD, borderline personality disorder, is identity disturbances and not really knowing who you are. So that's something I've always really struggled with. I've always sort of had a picture in my mind of who I'd like to be, but not really knowing how to get there. Um, but I've never actually been that person. And one of the things I figured that I could do in order to focus on my intentions um, was to live by my values. So, anyway, this podcast is about how to keep your attention on your intentions, and it's called Calmly Thinking Every Day. And this is my Border Polar podcast. So, let's talk about why we set an intention. One of the important components of dialectical behavior therapy, which is the key therapy for borderline personality disorder, is mindfulness. So, one of the good parts about setting an intention is that it gives you the opportunity to practice mindfulness every day. Mindfulness being the act of being in each moment, at that moment, accepting it for what it is without judgment, and just being in that moment. It also gives you an opportunity to live based on your values. Again, like I said, identity disturbance is a problem for people with borderline personality disorder. And so even though I don't really know who I am, I look in the mirror and I don't know who I am. It's the what I mean by that is um science shows that people with borderline personality disorder have an underdeveloped limbic system in their brain. And I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. So let me rephrase. Um, People with borderline personality disorder, it is believed, have an underdeveloped object permanence. Object permanence is something that infants learn uh, that teaches them that when someone goes away, they're going to come back. Because at first, when an infant is born, they don't understand that. So when their caregiver disappears and then comes back, excuse me, it's a big surprise because they don't have object permanence. They don't understand that people will return. That's why peekaboo is so much fun for babies. Well, with people with borderline personality disorder, it's understood that their object permanence is underdeveloped. And that is why they have abandonment issues, and that leads to the first uh, symptom of borderline personality disorder, frantic attempts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Now, with that comes identity disturbance. Because when you feel that way, when you feel so alone, when you're alone, you almost feel like you don't exist when there's no one else around. Because you've developed a character, a personality that's based off of the people around you. You mold yourself to the people around you. You focus on their interests. You develop interests in their interests. You get their sense of humor, their sense of style. You might emulate people on television a lot. You might change your appearance a lot. These are all characteristic of people with BPD in the way that the identity disturbance manifests themselves into their lives. Um, and so this identity disturbance leaves you with a lack of identity. But if you can focus on just what your values are and live by those values, you can help yourself to develop an identity that's based on who you are, brass tacks. And some of my values include honesty, kindness, fairness, and acceptance. So if I focus on value-based living and I put those into my intentions and I practice mindfulness, I can also achieve goals. And so all of these things are going to help me to be the person that I want to be and overcome the shortcomings that I have in my brain based on biology. And so that is why we set an intention. Now, I was talking to my mother, like I said, about wanting to be this person that I have in my mind, but not knowing how to get there. And she suggested that I set something called an intention word. And the word that she came up with that she suggested off the bat was calmly. And it actually worked very well for me because I'm always living in such an agitated state. So calmly is a very good intention word for me to think of throughout the day. Um, One of the problems with borderline personality, with border polar, because I don't know if it's just BPD or if it's bipolar disorder that makes me this way, but one of the problems I have as a border polar is the lack of motivation. Um, and It's hard for me to focus, like I had said. But thinking of the word calmly will will give me a direction when I don't know what to do. If you have a border polar diagnosis, you've probably found yourself wandering around going, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to be doing right now? What do I do? And it's just a question that comes across your brain hundreds of times a day. What do I do now? Because there is that lack of identity and there is that chaos going on. So you can't slow down, you can't speed up enough, you can't get the right speed in your brain to know what to do next. So setting an intention is going to bring you back to a focus and give you an option of things that you can do based on those values that you have here that you know are a part of who you are when you don't really know who you are. And with the propensity for chaos, with chaos wanting to reign in your brain, it's important to focus on those values or you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to make poor choices for yourself and for your life. So the intention word my mom suggested was calmly, and it worked out very well for me because that's something that I need. I need that grounding force. But something else might work for you. Strength, growth, stability, anything. It could be something like chocolate because you like chocolate, or pizza because pizza is your favorite food. So, some word that you're going to remember. But what you do is you take the word and you turn it into an acronym, meaning that you give each letter its own specific meaning. And each of those meanings will guide you toward an intention for your day. So in my daily life, I have several intentions that I would like to fulfill, but I'm not very good at the doing. So this is what I've been working on over the last several months, calmly. Honestly, I don't know if it's been several months, but it's been a little while, and I've been able to incorporate calmly into my day almost all the way. And what I did at first, my mom suggested writing the word calmly on the calendar each day and crossing off the letters as I complete them. But I am not that disciplined. So I adapted her idea and I wrote calmly on a chalkboard. And then each day, at the end of the day, I put a line underneath the letter of the ones that I had accomplished. And I'll explain that in a minute what I mean by accomplished. Um, and then at the end of the week, I could look and see what the trend looked like. If I had a lot of lines under a specific letter, I knew I was doing really well in that area. But if one was lacking, I knew what I needed to focus on. So calmly. The C in calmly stands for clean. So that's my first intention, that's one of my intentions because they're not really prioritized necessarily, because I do approach all of these things with my basic four-part mantra that I live by. Everything I do, I approach with these four ideas in mind. Number one is one breath at a time. Number two, don't be too hard on yourself. Three, enjoy all the happy moments when they come. And four, treat others as you would like to be treated. So again, with this, you approach it with that second part especially in mind. Don't be too hard on yourself. So again, these are not prioritized, and you're not going to give yourself a hard time if you don't get through them. It's just a way to keep this forefront focus in your mind of what your intentions are and what values you want to live by. So every day I would like to clean something. So this is again part of that goal-oriented um, part of setting an intention. Even if it's just taking out the garbage, doing the dishes, and which I've been doing every day for quite a bit now. Um, so you clean every day. That's my first intention. My second intention, I set the word apothecary. If you don't know what an apothecary is, and if you know me, you know I love old-timey words, but it's an old-timey word for a doctor. Um, I like it as a fun word, and it reminds me to take my medicine. So apothecary to me means take your medicine. Because if you are a border polar, you know that it's very difficult sometimes to remember to take your medicine every day. You can set alarms, you can write it down, but for some reason, you're going to forget. And when you forget, your symptoms go out of whack, and the symptoms are the most important thing. So apothecary sets that intention for me every day. I must take my medicine. The L in calmly stands for lather. And that's how I put in there self-care. So that's going to include things like take a shower every day, shave, brush your teeth, basic self-care, and lather because of soap. So I just kind of made it fun for me to remember these things. And then the M stands for mindfulness because this is something that I want to practice throughout the day. And I'm taking it down to if I'm doing the dishes and I'm stressed out because doing the dishes is very difficult for me. I know it seems like a very minute task, but when I go to do the dishes, I have panic attacks because I don't see the dishes. I see every obstacle in front of me for the rest of my life, and it's daunting and it's overwhelming, and it crushes down on me, and then I can't do the dishes. And there was a period in my life, the one period in my life where I lived by myself, and I did not do the dishes for months. I bought a lot of paper products. It was very bad, and that will never happen again. So I've been doing the dishes every day. But one of the ways that you can practice mindfulness is while you're doing the dish. If you're focusing on the stress, if you're focusing on anything else, all you do is say, I'm washing this dish. I'm washing this dish. I'm washing this dish. I'm rinsing this dish. You just focus on what you're doing. Accept that moment for what it is. So mindfulness in every moment of every day, as much as you need it, practice it, stop, take a few mindful breaths, mindfulness throughout the day. The L, the second L in calmly, is going to stand for literature. And this one is just a personal value of mine. I love reading and I want to instill that love of reading in my kids, and we've bonded over reading their whole lives. And ever since my diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, I've been hit or miss on the reading. And now they're older and they don't necessarily want me to read to them before bedtime. And so we don't do that. So I put literature in there because I want to read with my children every day. And that's something that I've started getting back into. I'm reading every day with my younger son now, but I still need to incorporate it in with my older son, who already has a love of reading. I just want to share that with him. So literature for me means spend some time reading with your kids every day. That is the one I have not gotten to work into my daily routine, but I'm working on it and I'm not being too hard on myself. And the very last one is yoga, because I have been doing yoga on and off as a sometimes practice for about 15 years. You know, I might do it once a day for a couple of weeks and then not do it. I might do it a few days a week for a couple of months and then not do it. But I've been doing it for a long time. I've never taken a class and I've always wanted to. I do yoga with Adriene, and I'm happy to give her a plug on YouTube. She is amazing. She's very popular and a wonderful yoga instructor, Yoga with Adriene. Um, and I have been doing yoga for all those years, and it's very important to me. It's a grounding force for me. It's a spiritual force for me. It's a self-love for me, which is difficult for me. And I didn't realize it was all of those things for me. I thought it was just my way of exercising easy. Of course, a lot of people don't agree with me that yoga is easy, but to me it is because I have a bad back and I can't do running and all those other kinds of aerobic type things. So yoga is my last intention in calmly. So I've been practicing this for a few weeks now, and the way that I began was when I had trouble, whenever I had a symptom, irritability, agitation, frustration, sadness, emptiness, whenever I had a negative symptom, even a positive symptom, even when the symptom was good, but I knew it was a manic symptom. Whenever I had a symptom, I thought to myself, I am going to calmly do this. I am going to calmly clean. I'm going to calmly take my medicine. I am going to calmly take a shower. And I just kept repeating that word. And every time I said calmly, those things came into my mind. Clean, take your medicine, take a bath, be mindful, read with your kids, and do yoga. And just keeping those intentions here at the forefront of my mind has helped me to start incorporating them into my day. And I just want to share this with you in case it helps you. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a symptom of impulsivity, because my mom also mentioned that you can take this intention and when you're ready to extend it to something bigger, you can add to it. I could calmly walk and take the W and make it mean something, you know, and I could and take the A and make it mean something and add more and more intentions as I grow stronger and stronger and more able to be in control of my emotions. So I was realizing that I recently came out of a relationship in which I made a lot of poor choices. And I realize now that my impulsivity, the symptom of impulsivity, which is one of the symptoms of borderline personality disorder and also uh, a part of mania, not necessarily listed in the DSM-5, but impulsivity is definitely a symptom of both of my disorders, and it's one that's caused me a lot of trouble in the way that it translates into my life. I am impulsive, and so I make poor choices without thinking. So I decided the other day that in order to focus on that symptom, impulsivity, I would add the word thinking to my intention word. So from now on, I will spend my days calmly thinking. So then I had to decide, and this was just a couple days ago, and that's why I decided to share this with you. Um, I had to decide what those letters were going to mean and what other intentions I wanted to bring to the forefront of my mind every day. So let's talk a little bit about impulsivity because it is a major symptom, one of the major 9 symptoms of borderline personality disorder in the DSM-5. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and reference it right from the text. It's symptom number 4, impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging: spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating, etc. This is not including impulsivity included with self-mutilating behavior that is also in symptom number 5. However, that is important to mention because it is another type of impulsivity. So as impulsivity reigns, and as any symptom reigns, we need to focus on those symptoms, much less on our diagnosis, much more on our symptoms. So we focus on these symptoms and we make the changes that we need to make in our lives so that the symptoms don't affect our lives so much. And we make these changes where we can. Tiny baby steps, one breath at a time. Don't be too hard on yourself. And importantly, celebrate the small things. So for example, I already love to help people. I really love to help people. So I went ahead and threw helping in for the H in thinking because it's already part of my intentions, but it is important to keep it at the forefront of my mind because when I'm being impulsive, I can pause, I can calmly think, and I can say to myself, does this decision help people? Does this decision help me? Does it help me grow? So when I think of helping and I think of impulsivity and I remind myself to calmly think and I think of my values, those words can all bring me right back to being mindful of who I want to be and mindful of the moment that I'm in. And that's what I mean by celebrating the small things. I'm celebrating the fact that I can put helping, an intention I already have and I already keep right here, right in there. Super easy. And now I can feel more accomplished every day because I know that I'm going to accomplish that one. Like if I were still underlining, which I don't need to do now anymore because I'm keeping it at the forefront of my mind. But if I were still underlining, I'd be underlining that H every single day because I know that my value is to help people and I know that I do it every single day. So I can high five myself every day on that small goal. And I love celebrating the small things. So, um, and then learning from my mistakes. And that's the whole reason why I added thinking to my intention work. So now I will be calmly thinking every day. And that's because I learned a lot from this last relationship that I was in and my behaviors and the decisions that I made and whether or not they were good for me. And my impulsivity got in my way. It really did. And I need to make changes that are going to stop me from making the same mistakes again because it's hurtful to other people when our actions, because of our symptoms, are not the actions we would have wanted to take. Um, when you look back, and hindsight is 2020, with someone with a borderpolar diagnosis, it's also like watching a whole different movie when you understand what you've done, when you realize what symptoms were active when you were making your choices. And if you can focus on changing your life in that you live by your values and you learn from those mistakes so that the next time you make a decision, you make a more sound one, then you'll hurt less people. And that's really what we want to do. And then I added, like I said, thinking was the word I chose because I'm focusing on change. So as I go out throughout my day calmly, like I was before, I will go through my day calmly thinking, meaning that I'm going to focus more. So a lot of these have to do with focus. So let's look at what I decided I would put into my intentions with the word thinking. So for the T, I put take notice because I am not observant. In addition to borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, I have what's called social anxiety disorder. How that's manifested into my life in a couple of ways briefly. When I was in high school and I didn't have one of my very best friends walking through the hallway with me, I was always reading a book while I walked. In that way, I was never alone and no one could see me, because I had so much anxiety about being out in social situations that I had to escape into another world in order to handle the anxiety. So if I had a friend with me, I was fine because then I had someone to leech onto. I had an identity to have. I had a person to be. But if I wasn't with someone and I didn't know who I was and I didn't have someone to be and people were looking, I wouldn't even know who they were seeing. So instead, I would just read a book while I walked. I got very good at doing that. Um, and then it also translated into my life to where when I was an adult, I didn't go grocery shopping by myself until I was 31 years old because it was too difficult for me to be out in those social situations on my own. Now I'm 40. I just turned 40 on Saturday. And last week, I went out for karaoke all by myself and I sang in front of strangers with no friends there at all. So you can make progress if you decide you want to make progress and you're ready to work at it. So take notice is my first one because I'm an unobservant person. I have put up these blinders on purpose in my life so that I could shut the world out because it scared me. And I need to take those blinders off because it's those blinders that has stopped me from making the right choices. Those blinders have stopped me from seeing people for seeing people's character. They've stopped me from seeing my own choices for what they are. They've stopped me from seeing what's happening. They've stopped me from being able to be mindful. So I have to take those blinders down and I have to take notice. That's the first one of my new intentions. The second, like I mentioned already, was helping. And I'm going to be able to think about that even more than I already do. Helping others is a wonderful therapy. So if you're ever feeling really down, see if someone else needs an ear because listening to someone else talk about something they need to talk about is a great way to feel like you're contributing to the world. The third one I put on there is interests. Now this comes back to my identity disturbances. I need to figure out who I am, and I think that the best way for me to do that is to explore the things I already know I like. For example, yoga. I am going to plan on trying to take a yoga class. I love to read, but I don't because it's hard for me to sit and read. So what I need to do is focus more on the things I know I like and throw myself into them a bit more. Then I will feel more like me. I took a train yesterday and I recently lost my book collection, but my niece gave me a few books and now I have a new one and I started reading The Three Musketeers on the train and it was wonderful. I haven't read like that in such a long time. And I got into another world again, not to escape, but to just enjoy it. And so that's another intention that I need to bring to the forefront of my mind is focusing on my interests and bringing them into my life so that I can figure out who I am. Now, the last one, if you think about impulsivity and the fact that I put now in here, it's going to be a little bit confusing. So let me explain. Now has to do with fear. I have a lot of fear of failure. I was 31 years old. I went to school for 15 years after I graduated high school before I graduated from college. And when I was 31 years old, I decided in my mind that it was okay to get a B. It was never okay before that. If I got a B, it was a devastating experience. But I decided then that it was okay to get a B because it's okay not to be perfect. And I'm far from perfect. I mean, don't get me wrong, but my grades were always my identity. If I got A's, then I knew who I was. But it was okay to get a B because sometimes you're not going to be the best at learning and repeating something. I was always really good at learning and repeating things. Doesn't mean I remembered them as time went on. But fear of failure has prevented me from doing a lot of things in my life. For example, I'm starting a new job this week and I'm terrified because it's a fast food job and I'm going to have to deal with a lot of people every day and I have massive amounts of social anxiety. But instead of being afraid, instead of shying away from this opportunity to be a contributing member of society in some way, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to push my fear aside. I'm going to remember to think. I'm going to remember to take notice. I'm going to remember to be observant, and I'm going to remember to think about whether or not my choices are helping me and helping others. But I'm going to act now even if I'm afraid, so long as the choice is sound. So that's something that my niece suggested to me because she was hearing me talk about being fearful of something. So now is my next intention. You're afraid, but it's a good decision. Just do it. Just do it. YOLO, baby. You only live once. My next intention for thinking is knowledge. And that is an easy one for me to fulfill too. So high five, setting goals every day. We're going to make that one because most days I learn something new on purpose. But I don't always. And it's not always in the form of what I would like it to be. I would like to research one thing every day so that I can translate it into these videos for you and for me. So knowledge is going to be moved to the forefront of my mind when I think about calmly thinking because it's right there in the K, knowledge. So every day I want to think about gaining more knowledge. Not to mention that it's a great way to help ward off the onset of Alzheimer's, keeping that brain sharp. The next letter I have is intuition. Now, this is a tough one for me and for a lot of people with borderline personality disorder. I can't say for certain that bipolar disorder comes with the lack of being able to trust your gut, but I know that with BPD it does. So as a borderpolar individual, it's very difficult for me to trust my gut. My perception of situations is often very wrong because my emotions are so heightened. I once heard having BPD as being described as being um, like a burn victim as far as your emotions are concerned, where you're constantly exposed with vulnerable tissue, like a burn victim is. And any jarring, any touch of emotion is like just painful. And it's true. Even good emotions are so overwhelming that you don't know what to do with them. So trusting your gut when things are so big all the time is very difficult because you're saying to yourself, is this a decision I'm making because I'm feeling way too happy when normal people or someone with a brain that isn't affected by borderline personality disorder or isn't affected by bipolar wouldn't be thinking that way? And um, that's something important to focus on, your intuition, because one of the things that I did in my last year of experience is not trust my gut. I had a gut feeling many times over the last year that the choices I was making were not the right choices, but I did not know if I could trust my gut. So it's very important to me that I put intuition and taking notice. And now, all of these are I'm so excited about this new intention word because these are some very important values for me because I want to trust myself. I want to believe in myself. I want to know that the decisions I'm making are the right ones for me and the right ones for the people that I love. And so intuition is that second eye in thinking for me. And then notes, which is neat because I've already started doing it. I've been carrying this around with me for a while. I think you've seen it if you've paid attention. I've been taking notes in it. I've been taking notes in this notebook. Um, I have a section on BPD, a section on bipolar, a section on PTSD, which we haven't really got to yet, and just writing things down when I think of them. I've been taking notes in my mindfulness course, which I unfortunately missed the last 2 weeks because my life has been a little bit of an upheaval right now, but I'm still practicing it. But notes is another important thing to me that I write things down as I'm thinking of them. And so I wanted to put that into my intentions, and it's another high five because I've already been doing it, but I want to keep doing it. So I threw that in there. And last but not least, definitely not least, is gratitude. One thing that I've learned over the last 8 months is how to practice gratitude. I think of practicing gratitude as encompassing things like admitting when you make a mistake, apologizing sincerely, thanking people for the things they do when they do something nice for you, looking around and just being grateful for the fact that we have what we have, and knowing that it can always be worse, but practicing gratitude is super important, which is why I made a meme the other day, keep some gratitude in your attitude. And that's a new mantra that I'm going to take on, not as part of my 4-part mantra. Well, maybe I'll add it, who knows? But it's definitely one that I'm going to throw in there. And so gratitude, keeping that at the forefront of my mind is going to be important to me too. So this is my coping mechanism for how I'm going to try and live a life that's based on the values that I hold dear by calmly thinking every day. So if you think that this is something that might be able to help you, then please come up with your own intention words. If you want to share them in the comments below, I would love to hear it if you find this helpful. But and if you think that you know someone who needs some direction in their life and that this tool could help them, feel free to share this with them. I can't believe I'm saying this, but subscribe, like the video, all that kind of stuff that people say on YouTube channels. This has been my Borderpolar podcast, and today we are talking about calmly thinking every day, keeping your attention on your intentions. Thank you for joining me.